I wanted to say a few things at the beginning before we get started. I want you to know that this program will be recorded and that you'll be able to access it afterwards or at your convenience. Also, the recording has now begun, so we're starting to capture the evening's activities for the future. Tonight, our program is entitled A Conversation with Two Extraordinary Traditional Artists. And we're going to learn a little bit more about these extraordinary artists as we go on. Before we do that, I want to begin by reading a land acknowledgement from Michigan State University. Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. The university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. Now, I'd like to introduce our special extraordinary artists who are joining us tonight. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in the way that they feel most comfortable. And let me begin by turning to Yvonne Walker-Keshick.
Honey, my name is Yvonne Walker-Keshick. I am Turtle Clan, a member of Little Traverse Bay Band's Odawa Indians. I was born in Charlevoix, Michigan, which was originally named Pine River, and I am now residing in Harbor Springs.
Wasson.
Wasson Indigenous Class. Renee Dillard, Shaganashinosan. Gindin Dadis, O Washtanong, Chewasa Jawanong. Bejik Etta Ngwis. Ngodwaso No Shansak. Nimki Dodem. Mumpi Inda Waganok Sing Indoda Bendakwes Mumpi. So my native name is Light All Around, but my taxpayer name is Renee Dillard. And I was born in the Grand Rapids area. I have only one son, but 6 grandchildren. And I am Thunder Clan. And I now reside on the place of the Crooked Tree Reservation, also known as Little Traverse Bay Band. And we're like neighbors. This is so cool because she's just 2 houses down from where I'm at. So
it's wonderful to have you both in the same space tonight together in this way. It's very unusual for our audience, I think, to have that opportunity. Tonight's program is really related is connected directly to the special exhibit called Kindred, Traditional Arts of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I did want to also acknowledge that the funding for this exhibition being at Michigan State University Museum was provided by the Michigan State University Federal Credit Union and the Michigan Traditional Arts Program. So as we get into the format tonight, I just also wanted to say that we're going to begin by just a conversation, probably for the first 30, 40 minutes, back and forth with some questions. And in the meantime, though, those in the audience are welcome to put questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom site here, and we will take the last 20 minutes or so responding to those questions. We'll allow our special guests do that. So I hope that you'll put your questions in the Q&A as we go along, so you don't forget them too, and also it makes it easier for us to manage them. And we'll have some help with MSU student assistance here in the Q&A. So let's begin, because this is an a program related to the exhibit. We've been very fortunate at Michigan State to be able to host the Kindred exhibit that was at the Crooked Tree Arts Center in Petoskey. And when I first saw it, we were just blown away by the quality and richness of it. This exhibit was curated by Eric Hemingway and Liz Erlewine, and they did just such a terrific job. I wondered if we could start off by having each of you share a little bit about your experience with the exhibit. When were you first contacted about being involved, and just in general, what did it feel like seeing that exhibit the first time and the programs associated with it? Somebody want to start?
Yep. I think what I'm going to do is, because we're talking on more of a spiritual level, if we could start with a little prayer.
Mm.
So it's in the language, but I'll translate. Gajemnado miigwech ki bigit nad mo yang one ki wedwin. We nagdo windmong kinagego. Creator, thank you for all that you trust us to take care of. Nagado win mishnong work wisichige on jebamad jig minoa kinake temagat. Guide our actions as we make the best choices for both our people and the natural world. Mimanda ejuque doyong nangwa. That's the help that we're asking for today. Miigwech kajemnado minoa ge manadok nadmakuya. Thank you to the Creator and all the other spirits who are here to help us. And I think that kind of outlines a little bit of what I wanted to say about, I'm a weaver. And it also speaks about my relationship with the earth and how I view all of the gifts that the Creator gives us through the earth, and how we respect them. And it was nice to be able to try and convey that through the exhibition, to show at least what I hope is the respect that I have for the plants that I gather, the manner that I gather them, and what I'm trying to reflect. I'm not just recreating artwork and weaving that is done long ago, but I'm still having that dear relationship with the earth, the same place as my ancestors and elders so long ago that I no longer know their names, but yet I know that they're here. And so anytime I get a chance to show the community at large some of my work, I hope that that's what they come away with, is an understanding of the great reverence that I have for the gifts that I have to offer. And Crooked Tree was awesome by offering us that opportunity right here in our homelands, because this is a special place to us. This is a power place, is how I call it, because I've been being called home for most of my life since I was born downstate. And now towards the elder part of my life, I made it home. And now that I'm here, it is such a joy to be here, and my moccasins walk on the same land and stand at scarred trees that I no longer know the people that had done that, but I'm standing right where they stood. And that sense of connection that our Mother, the Earth, gives us is extraordinary. And to help people in general in the community at large kind of grasp and get a glimpse at that kind of relationship. So that's what I wanted to offer.
That's wonderful and very powerful. Yvonne, what was your sense of the exhibit and your experience of how you came to get involved? Any reflections on the whole process?
I don't recall exactly when they approached me to and let me know that the exhibit was going to be happening, but I did get a brochure and I pinned it up on the kitchen wall so everybody that came in could see it. when the exhibit actually happened, I did not realize it was going to be both rooms, to the extent that it was. And I was really surprised and pleased to see that, because the artwork that was shown was like visiting old friends. And when I see exhibits of things that I have done in the past, it makes me really grateful for my ancestors, who did the same kind of work, in the past. And I was really proud of them. And I also wanted them to be proud of me. So I need that from the community, from here, from where I live. We're still looking for approval. So, but I was really, I'm familiar with the people at Cricket Tree, and I had worked with them on a lot of other projects. So it was like visiting and hanging out with old friends, so I really enjoyed it and was really grateful for the opportunity.
Well, you capture something that I really wanted to explore a little bit more anyway here with your comment there, Yvonne, which is that there's something about the being honored in your own community that's very special. Wasson, you kind of referred to that too. But you both have had, the reason we titled this session a conversation with two extraordinary traditional artists, is that you've both had recognition not only from your community in many ways, but also you've had state recognition with Michigan Heritage Awards. You've been recognized nationally, both of you, in really extraordinary ways we could talk about. But more importantly, rather than just make the list of all your recognitions, which we could spend the rest of this time with, what I'd like to do is just get your thought about how has that influenced your own work? Has it been valuable and meaningful to get recognition both at the local level, but even at the national and international level? And has that influenced your work at all? Yvonne?
Yes, it has influenced me a lot. The quill work I do is not really what my ancestors did to the extent that to what I do. The work that they did in the past was very, very basic, very direct, very important for storing food, seeds, herbs, and medicines. And what I am doing is not geared for that same purpose. They have evolved into art pieces. So one of my future plans, my plans in the future is to begin doing quill work in the old style, the way they used to do them, so that we can have examples of what they used to look like for storing foods and seeds and herbs and medicines. So I want to do a project like that.
Could you give me an example?
If you can imagine the size of a hat box, of maybe 8 inches tall and 6 inches high, or 12 inches diameter, and it held dried corn. So I might want to put the picture of the dried corn on the top, and then assemble the box using roots the way they did it in the old days, and then some quill decoration on the bottom. So they're very practical, functional, useful pieces. So that is something that I would like to do in the future.
Well, that's exciting. You're whetting our appetites already for what comes next here. Wasson, how about for you? You've enjoyed. You actually just recently were honored again in another setting by the First Peoples Fund. I know. But what does that do for you? Has it changed your approach to your work? Your thinking about your work in any way?
Yes, most definitely, but not probably in the way that others might expect. I don't patron art shows, and I guess I was in the process of figuring out how this got called art, because some of the weavings, most of the weavings I do are very practical.
Mhm.
And although they're beautiful and they're pleasant to the eye and there's purpose beside the color and design, what this whole whirlwind has been like, because I've spent my life doing this kind of work, is open doors to the back room, to what I call my elders that are in storage or on display at various establishments across Turtle Island. And because of my reputation of being thorough and research, it's been easier to access those and go visit those, what I call elders, and spend some time with them to see what it is that they want to show me. Because I've kind of feel like I've gotten to the point is those are my teachers now, because I'm really looking at and counting and figuring out the logistics of the technical part of it, because weaving is kind of similar, kind of not on every piece, and there's signatures on how it's done. And it's been a fascinating ride, but it's a means to the end, because my whole teaching philosophy is all about, you have to know where you've been to have a clear direction for where you're going. So once I understood how these patterns and these techniques were passed down from mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter, mostly matriarchal, passing down these patterns and techniques, it's been a good way to help my community heal from the various traumas. And there's a long list of which one you want to pick, but it's not, I don't believe our people, the majority of our people, talking in generalities, are crying over spilt milk. I think that we're in the process of healing. And these pieces that both I know Yvonne and I bring to the community to reestablish within a new family, a tradition brought back, helps our people feel that sense of pride and creates that relationship with the earth that they didn't have before, in another level of relationship, and help deepen that it's all about the relationship with the earth, because everything that we get is not available at Walmart. Everything we do, we have to go in the bush, and we ask permission every time we go. It's really amazing that we get to do this experience just after coming back from Beaver Island, where on that island we got to see some woods that are not here on the mainland anywhere that I saw. There were some powerful, beautiful places. It took us forever. It's a small island. It took us forever just to go down the road, because we kept stopping to visit with these enormous trees that we don't have here on the mainland, and the things they've seen and the language that they've heard. I just wanted to be in there and soak that up, but it really helped replenish my spirit, and that helps give me the motivation. But as far as the recognition, it's more like a means to the end. It's like opens up doors of opportunity, not necessarily to sell my art, because I'm not that interested in selling it that way. I do sell some pieces, but I'm more interested in getting the art reestablished within our community. So it helps in that way. And it's been a crazy ride. I mean, both of our lives, I've dedicated my life to weaving and teaching weaving, sharing that wherever the community is ready to roll up their sleeves. Nothing really gets delivered. I know Yvonne has classes where the first one is you're given a porcupine, you know? And well, I mean, this is the reality of it. This is how we have to go. And people want to make a basket and I hand them an axe. It's not always, the example that they thought it was going to be, but really it helps you to understand and appreciate all of the labor that goes in it. So our community
really-
treats us so well when they love us and we're treated so well, but not often have I had the opportunity to exhibit in my own community. Like I get recognized outside more
Mhm.
because they see me in the hall all the time at the government center or where I'm teaching language or, I'm just here all the time. I mean, we have some really powerful artists that come from this area. And I believe it's all about that relationship with this power place on this earth. This is an extraordinary place that we live.
It really is. You used a phrase there, was on opening the doors to the back room idea, and the way you learn from other baskets or mats or woven pieces as traditional knowledge, a source of traditional knowledge for you. I wonder if I could ask each of you to just reflect, since this is a museum exhibition and you both had work experience with museums. Some of that has probably been positive and some maybe not so positive, but I think museums are trying to think in new ways to open their back, provide access. Can you share a little bit about your own thinking about ways museums can better support and assist and make their collections, make those elders come alive, right? Those materials to help the communities that, particularly in your case, the Odawa communities. Yvonne, any thoughts about that? You've had your work shown all over the world, and
Yeah. Recently, when we were over in Beaver Island, one of the women there at the museum asked me, because they didn't have very many quill watches, but she asked me, what could they do for the art pieces? And I told them, I says, give them some water. I said, they need a drink. I said, even if it's one quill box, take it out, give it one spritz of water and let it dry. And then a week later, give the bottom part of that, the spritz, of water, because they're in museums where they were meant to be handled and used, and the moisture in the air, that is what, kept them supple. When you put them in a museum, then they begin to dry out and get brittle. And then, when they want repair work to it, it's so dry and brittle, you can't repair it. So I did tell her, give them some water, then because water is life, for them and for us. So that was my recommendation for her over there, and I said it wouldn't hurt it any, I didn't think.
I think that it'll add longevity to the pieces. I know that the back room has changed over my lifetime. I was a little kid when my mother was gaining access, and the attitudes have done a real big change and were welcome more. And it wasn't always that way. So now that we're getting in the back rooms, that's probably the first thing that comes to my mind is they need a drink. They can't be treated in the same way that wool is treated or other types of, and it's a logistical nightmare because they're all in, a lot of times beads can't be stored in the same places because of the moisture and all of that. But the natural fibers, if you give them a drink, they'll last longer. They just need to be rehydrated. I was suggesting, if not every year, because for some places it'll be a nightmare. Maybe you can rotate things so that they can get something of a drink at least every couple years, so that they can come out and have some of that. But the other thing on a positive level that has changed, more and more institutions are creating a culture room, because I am visiting my elders, and there are opportunities for me to regroup, because it's a powerful experience when I come across a piece that's strong. And it's because some pieces, I call it comatose. They're there, but they're not able to, I can't feel them in there. And then other pieces that are just gone. You know, I come across and I say, I can't make any, there's nothing in here. This piece is already gone. And that's the way that most of these pieces are, the woven pieces are meant to be. That was probably the bargain that those women made when they gathered it, is it's going to go back to the earth, just like we do. Everything that we take goes back into the earth, and we take their, these plants and these fibers and these different elements and put it together. Eventually they'll go back to the earth. So we're trying to defy nature by saving them forever. So let's give them a drink and let them try and be as comfortable as they can. But the culture rooms is a huge plus. I've come across some establishments lately where maybe the pit goes all the way through the floor to the ground, which is of course essential, and just a place to just kind of, because there's lots of things in there talking. There's lots of stuff going on inside these back rooms, and there's a lot of emotion and stuff. And so sometimes it's just good to take a minute and go out and have a ceremony and regroup myself in order to come back and be ready to be really present, so that I can feel what these pieces are trying to help show me.
Well, thank you for that. That's not only good conservation advice, but it's also important cultural knowledge, and we certainly need to keep learning from one another, right? I have some specific questions for each of you. Yvonne, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you work, of course, in birch bark and in quills with sweetgrass, probably best known for that. And in this exhibition, you have some extraordinary examples of your work and your family's work. We'll get to that in a bit. But I wanted to get your sense of a question that I get often when people see your work, is they're surprised that you work primarily without dyes in your quills, with natural colors of the quills and a more natural character to your work. Could you tell us a little bit about your decision to do your quill work that way? Is that something that you think down the road that as you prepare your work, it makes it more complicated because you've got to think through the colors of the quills, right? But tell me a little bit about the source of that, because people generally are really impressed with your work for that reason.
Well, I have seen a lot of dyed pieces, and and they're really beautiful, and I do like dyes. And I have done repair work on boxes that have dyed quills, but that is where I limit then my dye work, other than when I do a repair work on a loom, or when I make a loom box, the loom gets the red eye. So that is one place where I don't stick to the no dye rule that I have made for myself. But the reason I do the natural color, to me, it provides more of a challenge for myself to get the shading, the color, the depth, the picture that I'm trying to to show. So when I teach a student, I tell them no dyes because it makes it too easy. I think it does it. What I want them to do is imagine and using their shading with natural quills to get the picture across, not using dyed colors, to get the picture across. I think using the color quills makes it too easy. It's too simple to me. Challenge comes in using the natural shading. So that's one of the reasons why I did that, and I try to stick with it. I do use quills that are natural. It's just a natural color. Like I did a Kachina doll with all natural quills on it, and it was surprising because I had yellows and golds and grays and browns in there. It's a real dark quill. So, and they were all natural color quills. So it can be done, and it was to me it was fun. Doing quill work for me is therapy.
It's therapy for all of us too, who get a chance to see your work, or those who get a chance to work with you. I did want to ask you a little bit, I know other quill workers look at your quill boxes with great admiration for your technical mastery and the tightness of your quilling. But I also think this exhibition conveys the range of the kinds of work that you've done. You mentioned earlier where you're kind of headed in the future, some new directions. But there's so many remarkable examples of wildlife and then some very larger quill boxes that tell stories or convey meaning. How do you come upon these ideas? Is it something that pops into your head that you just want to pursue, something you see?
I think when say the box with the bear, I was thinking about that. The bear is doing bear things. That's what it is. The three or four different kinds of bears. There's a Kodiak and a grizzly and the black bear, and I wanted to show more of them being doing things naturally that they would be doing. That they're all different, and yet they're all doing things pretty much the same. So I wanted to use a shading in there then too, where in one part of the bear, the ground, the shading is grass, and yet behind the other bear, the same kind of shading is trees in the way background. So it was just playing with colors, the natural colors, and trying to show that in a more natural way. One of the projects I plan on doing is the Sisters of the Great Lakes box. I am going to do a brother box showing the responsibilities of the male to the tribe, the community, the family, and so that's what the Sisters of the Great Lakes was, So I'm going to do a companion box for that. So
well, we all look forward to seeing that. I can only begin to imagine what it might look like. Wasson, I wanted to ask you a little bit about. Of course, you're known for many genres in a way here. You describe yourself as a weaver, and certainly a traditional teacher, educator in lots of ways. But in this exhibition, you're recognized as a fiber artist and you're a master finger weaver, a black ash basket maker, and an important culture maker. But the beauty we have in this exhibition, beautiful basswood bags that you've made. And also two wonderful videos, in your case, by Spencer McCormick on black ash basket making, and also one on cedar mat making. Can you tell us a little bit about what you would want visitors to take away from seeing the exhibit in those particular videos in a way? You've talked already about the connectedness of the culture not so much just the object as object's sake. But in the process of this exhibition, what was it you want the visitor to take away?
For the community at large, I would like them to understand we're still here and we're still evolving. We're
Mhm.
still using these items. I'm driving around in a car, living in a house with corners, but I still put my tobacco down in the same way that they had before. I'm still weaving, using those same techniques, but maybe in a little bit different way. So our work is evolving to help reflect the nature of the day. I've always said that only the artist can really interpret. The maker is the only one that can really interpret what they mean to convey. And so when I visit, for example, those old pieces in the museums that I call elders, I try and listen as closely as I can at what they're trying to convey by using these designs in this way or using these colors with the design in this way. But I can only compare it to my walk. And so I'm interpreting it according to my understanding and my relationship. And so visitors that come and look at these pieces, I want them to see the practicality of it and to understand we're still here. We're not just people in the history books. We're still here and we're healing and we've been through a lot, but I don't expect individuals to apologize for that. These were policies that were in place, not individuals that came forward. It's kind of strange to say that with our politics going on the way it is right now, but it still rings true. So
Well, both of you have been very committed to education and teaching others, and have done it for much of your lives. And of course, you're both the product of family that went before you, elders who went before who taught you. But can you say a few words about that, about the importance of passing on traditional knowledge and artistry? And Yvonne, maybe you could start us off. You have a pretty remarkable family and a remarkable quillers coming up. Coming up is not the right word. They're masters in their own right in many ways. But let's say a few words about family and education.
When I found out that Anna Damon, a quill worker, was my great aunt, and she was a quill worker, I was shocked because I thought I was the first quill worker in my family. And then when I saw their work, and the work of my grandmother, then I couldn't believe, that I realized I had a lot of work to do what they were doing, and that I was willing to do that. But what that taught me was that not to jump to conclusions, and to be able to, when I did go see Anna O'Damon and she hauled out all her quill boxes and showed them to me, she kept them in a cardboard box under her bed. And she just hauled them all out and showed them to us, and one at a time, one box after another, and I asked her, what's she going to do with them? And she said she didn't know. But she knew me as a co-worker. I told her I was just beginning. I actually took my uncle over there to visit her. And then Anna kept calling my Uncle Pete, kept calling him Ben, because she remembered my Uncle Ben more than she did Pete. But but it made me realize, that what I was learning from her by looking at her boxes, that she was willing to share what she knew. And so that I should also share what I was learning from her with other people. And my own teacher, Susan Shaganaby, often told me the same thing. she said, when I'm gone, you're the teacher. She said, when I'm here, I'm the teacher. So, and she said it was my responsibility to share what I know, so that it doesn't die out. And when I was learning from Susan, she would tell people who came in the door that it's a dying art. It's a dying art. But I remember I was so shy back in those days that in my mind, I'm thinking, not as long as I'm alive, because by then I realized that I truly liked and loved doing quill work, and that I hadn't made the decision to do that for the rest of my life at that time, but it had a major impact on me, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to die out, that it was not a lost art. And to ensure that was to make sure that I was teaching somebody else.
Well, you've done that in such significant ways, and both of you have been honored not only for your traditional knowledge and role within these traditions, but also as educators, as committed to sharing it within your community and sometimes within your family. I'm realizing I want to go to a couple of questions from our audience, if we can do that, just to make sure we get those questions answered. And maybe we'll see if one of our students would like to read the questions. Start with the first one.
Yeah, we've been getting quite a few questions in the chat and in the Q&A. The first one we got was from Andrea. She said, I have found that quill box artists leave dried bay leaves in their quill boxes. What is the purpose of the dried bay leaves?
Well, they used to put the bay leaves in there thinking that it was an insect repellent, but I told them, that the better insect repellent should be like borax. The detergent insect repellent would be better to use than the bay leaf.
Thanks, Yvonne. How about another question?
We got another question asking if you could briefly describe the process of creating your art.
Now, this could take a little while, but let's I'll give you each a chance to say something about the process in response to this question.
I can sum it up real easy. Prayerfully and carefully. That's pretty, the knowledge being passed down, it's such a responsibility, especially when your instructors, which are oftentimes family, give you that responsibility that you have to share it responsibly as well. My mom was taught by a Kickapoo some of these techniques, and her name was Wapahopa. And my mom has long left this world as well, but I can still hear her telling me, be careful who you share it with so it's not exploited, and give it back to your people because it belongs with your community. And I promised that I would do that. So every time I get new students coming into my life, I thank them for helping me fulfill my promise to my mother, which is to give it to them. And I know that probably weighs a little bit on them because that's, I didn't make them promise back to me or anything, but it is a reciprocal relationship. That's why I've spent so much time being a sharer of this knowledge, because every time I do, I learn. We're teaching each other, not just from the plants and the earth, but the people that come to share. They come in with their walk that they've done on this life and their techniques, and we pool it all together, and it's a big, it's a very reciprocal relationship that I have with the people that come in. They're thirsty, and I know how to help them quench that thirst. And part of that thirst comes from healing. We're in that sacred time of grief and healing and getting ready to find your strength and move on. And it's really an incredible process to watch people create that relationship. So I didn't mean to make too light of it, but it is prayerfully and carefully. I can't even begin to think about anything until I pray and meditate. Because when I meditate, I get the answers. When I pray, I'm asking. And so I pray and meditate, and that's how I get inspired about what area, where do I need to concentrate my efforts now? And it's really a beautiful relationship. And other Native people that have come to learn, or that where I have gone and taught, they often go, you know what, this feels so familiar to me, and I've never done it before. And I say, that's because your ancestors are helping you. And it's that blood memory that runs in your veins. You couldn't even identify it. That's the medicine. That's the healing that that we're all looking for. And it's got nothing to do with apologies.
Right. Well, that's beautifully said. Yvonne, in answer to this question, again, I don't expect you would describe all the steps of making a quill box, but I recently just read a poem you wrote that it's more than a quill box. And I thought maybe that's a springboard for you to answer this question about when you look at a quill box, or what goes into a quill box.
Well, the inspiration, well, Susan used to tell me that you give the best of our lives, you know, you do the best job you can, and you teach the best you can, and you teach the best of our culture, because if teachers didn't do that to the students, for the students or family or anybody else who wants to learn, if you don't do that, then we aren't going to survive. So she said that by doing the best of what we do and teaching it to someone else, we're ensuring our survival of our culture. So, but the inspiration, a lot of it comes from, I can sit in a meeting and draw flowers off somebody's shirt, you know, and then say, oh, this would look really nice, and do it that way, you know, and put it on a quill box. Or I see things in a bark sometimes, you know, that shows me, you know, what I'm going to do, you know. And recently, I think it was in Beaver Island, I was telling them, you know, the eyes in a birch bark, you know, we're in the woods, you're never alone. Those eyes see you, you know, they're looking at you, and there's always something in the woods looking at you, not just the eyes on the birch tree. So it's a live art that, you know, that I am sharing with people. So that, I guess that's where the inspiration comes from, is giving the best of what I have.
I see we have another question in chat that actually has to do with the MSU Museum, and you both have connections to the MSU Museum. We probably should have a moment to recognize that a bit. Maybe that question, someone can read that? Is that Sarah? Could you read that one about the MSU Museum?
Yeah. So the question says, you have both talked a bit about relationships about the museum and museum collections. Is there anything you could say about the MSU Museum connections to you and your community in particular? And what would you hope for the future relationship of the MSU Museum and porcupine quill work artists?
I've had a long-term friendship with workers at the museum, and it goes way back. I think my daughter must have been, oh gee, she was just a young girl. So that family and friend thing, you know, it goes way back, and I've always considered the museum as an extended family, because they are caring for things that are part of our ancestry. So, and I trust them. So I enjoy the relationship we have, even though we seldom see each other, you know, on a personal, you know, basis. But I have always enjoyed a good relationship with the museum, and I'm grateful for the work that they're doing, because the artwork we're doing, both Wasson and I, it's important that it gets taken care of and that it's just a good thing.
You both have been, as I mentioned earlier, recipients of the Michigan Heritage Award, which is given to outstanding contributions in the traditional art form and also passing that on to others. Both of you have also had taken part in the apprenticeship program where you've received grants to teach others. Wasson, do you want to say anything about your experience with the MSU Museum?
I think probably maybe the biggest compliment that I can offer is I trust MSU Museum. And that's a big deal because we grew up in a time where we weren't very popular and then turned into popular. And now we're trying to protect some things from being exploited. And it's just been such a whirlwind ride on this life. And I can say that to trust the MSU Museum as an institution has been a great healing. And it's been a wonderful vehicle for me to gain deeper relationships within my community through the apprenticeship. It was awesome. And it took the economy part of the ecological concerns. I didn't have to worry about gas money for one thing, just the logistics of how we're going to, get to where we got to go, because it's, we're not buying anything. We have to go harvest all of our stuff and go out in the woods and find what it is that's being offered to us. And we haven't always had the best car to get out there, and so we're pulling our, so those opportunities to deepen those relationships within our community, those are long-standing relationships. When I take on an apprentice like that, it's like taking on another family member. They're very close to you, and those relationships extend far beyond the limitations of the grant. We still have, I still have apprentices in my life.
Well, you've only increased our sense of responsibility at the museum, and we will do our best to continue that and earn your trust. There are a couple of more questions in the chat.
Yeah, I thought a great one that was asked was for you guys to kind of explain when you began that transition from student to teacher, and what were some of the most impactful things you've learned from your mentors, teachers, and elders.
You want to go first this time?
I could go first this time. I remember what had happened is I've always been my father's daughter or my mother's daughter. Both of my parents were well established within a traditional community, although my father was Native and my mother is Scottish. And I was always working to kind of just be not somebody's daughter, just kind of be me. And I was weaving and doing pretty good at it. And then somebody came up to my mom at a gathering and said, "Are you Wasson's mother?" And she couldn't wait to hightail it over to me to say, "Well, you've made it. I'm now Wasson's mother. You're not May Ring's daughter anymore. I'm Wasson's mother." And I'm like, wow, I guess I think I made it. But I guess I'm still kind of learning in a certain sense. What happened is kind of started by the EAB for me, the Emerald Ash Borer. And when it took hold, real fast throughout Michigan, and I could see the writing on the wall. I needed to stop everything that I was doing and focus on trying to make as many baskets as I could. I even numbered them for a few years and see if I could get as many people on board to understand what it is that is endangered here. And then when it came up into this area so strong and started killing off many of the trees, so much so it wasn't sustainable, because I wanted them to have a chance to reseed. And I can still find, ash trees to harvest from, but that's not fair to my great grandkids. They need a chance to try and take hold, and they're fighting as much as they can to reestablish themselves up here in the numbers that they once were. And so I started to focus on other artwork, because I looked around and I couldn't find very many people who was, oh no, it's doing its thing. I couldn't find that many people that were weaving in the manner that I was weaving. It's done.
Maybe that's also a sign for us in a way too. We're coming to the end of our time, but I did want to give Yvonne a chance to respond to that question about that moment when you felt you were transitioning from being a student to a teacher. Do you remember a feeling or something that period in your life?
I do, and it was surprising because Susan always said, as long as I'm alive, I'm the teacher, and as long as I'm alive, you're the student. Well, one time I was down in Traverse City and I was living down there, and there came a knock on the door. And so I went to the door, and there was a man and a woman standing there, and they said, "Are you Yvonne Walker?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You do quill work?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You teach us?" I says, "I never taught anybody." And he says, "You think you can teach us?" And I says, "Well, I can give it a try." So I invited them in. They had sleeping bags, and they said, "How much would I charge?" And I told them I would charge them $30 a piece in food stamps, and they paid that. And I used the food stamps to feed them during the week that they stayed with me. And during that week, then I gave them assignments to do while I was at work. And when I came back, then we did the quill work class together. By the end of the week, we took our quill boxes to market, and I introduced them to Indian Hills Art Gallery because they wanted to continue making quill boxes and selling them. So when I walked in the store, Victor said, "Why weren't you here for Susan's funeral?" I said, "What?" He says, "Why weren't you here for her funeral?" I said, "I didn't even know she was gone." I said, "When was this?" And he says, "Monday morning." He says, 10 o'clock. And at the same time, these two people knocked at my door. So I became their teacher that week, and I've been teaching pretty much ever since.
Oh, what a remarkable story.
It's amazing.
Susan was a remarkable woman. We've reached the end of our time. I just want to thank you both for making time to be with us and to arrange to do it together. This looks so comfortable. I felt like I was right. I actually sat in this same spot in Wasson's living room at one point. So it's great to be with both of you. And we're so fortunate to have you not only with us tonight, but living among us, and the impact you're making on our state and your community is really something we all should celebrate. So with that, I just want to remind everyone that the exhibition will run through Saturday of this week, and then it will close. So if you haven't had a chance to come out and see it, please visit the MSU Museum to see this special exhibit called Kindred. So thank you both again. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.